أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا أما بعد إن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد يقول الله عز وجل في كتابه المجيد وقال الذين كفروا ربنا أرنا اللذين أضلانا من الجن والإنس نجعلهما تحت قدمنا ليكونا من الأسفلين ويقول الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم المرء على دين خليله فلينظر أحدكم من يخالف صدق الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Fussilat that the disbelievers will say on the day of judgment, O our Lord, show us those who have misguided us from the jinn and from mankind so that we may put them under our feet so that they may be the lowest of the low, so that we may trample them and that they be the lowest of the low, and then we all enter the hellfire. And Rasulullah said in the hadith of Abu Hurairah is the one who narrated the hadith, and it's Hasan, Sahih of course. And you can find this in the collection of An-Nawawi as well, and the Sunan of Abi Dawud, where Rasulullah states that every person is on the thinking or deen of his friend, of his Khalil. Rasulullah uses the word Khalil, and Khalil has a very big implication. It's not just a friend or an acquaintance, or not somebody you work with, it's not just a colleague. The Khalil is used in the context where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also uses the word Khalil. وَاتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took Ibrahim as a Khalil, a friend, a close, there's no word to describe it. It's like every person has that one person that they grew up with, whether it be a family member, whether it be a person that you went to school with, primary, elementary, high school, college. But it's a very strong bond which cannot be described with words. It's an emotion. That is the word which Khalil tries to capture. That one person that you hold in high esteem, you love the most, so on and so forth. So Rasulullah says that every person is on the deen, and that doesn't just mean faith. It means way of thinking, way of life, habits, everything. It encompasses everything. So every person is on the deen, way of life, of his khalil, of his close companion. Could be more than one, but usually it's that one person. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِفُ. So Rasulullah warns us. He said, فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ. Watch. He says, watch. Look carefully, look closely at those who or whom we befriend, whom we take as a khalil. The phenomenon that is known as peer pressure is implied in this hadith. Actually, it couldn't even be any more clear. Just the word peer pressure itself is not mentioned here in English. But this is a definition of peer pressure. That we are on the way of life, we are on the psychological footprint of our khalil, or more than one khalil. Likewise, there are many ayat in the Quran, if you really pay attention, also implicitly deal with peer pressure. And peer pressure is not necessarily the right word, because peer means that the pressure comes only from people who are on equal footing as you, your peers. It doesn't mention that pressure could come from your superiors, people who are over you, whether it be at work, your boss, or people who are not inferior in the sense that they don't have rights as you, but inferior meaning people who are below you in the chain of command. For example, your own children. They're not really your equals, your children. You have control over them. Human beings have equal rights, but as children, you have control over them. So I mean it in that sense. So peer pressure doesn't look at these types of pressures coming from above, coming from below. It only looks at a very narrow sense of pressure coming horizontally when you're all on the same footing. For example, your wife, or your friends, or your colleagues, or for kids who go to school, your friends, whether it be public school or Islamic school. So peer pressure is very narrow. So I don't like to use the word peer pressure. I like to use the word external force. It sounds more physics, it sounds more technical that way. External forces that shape your mind. And all throughout the seerah of Rasulullah, it was really Rasulullah's force. And by force, I don't mean compulsion, ikrah. I mean force like influence, external influence. The Sahaba became the Sahaba because of the influence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because he was the best of characters. He is the best of character. And so, by nature, people who associate with people with the best of characters, they themselves will get close to the best of characters. They themselves will pick up the best of the best, and they will reduce the worst of the worst in their character. But what does the ayah وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا رَبَّنَا أَرِنَا الَّذِينَ أَضَلَّانَا مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ all the way until the end, what does this ayah have to do with peer pressure? If we look at the meaning, the disbelievers are telling Allah, oh Allah, show us the people who misled us, who really messed us up on this day so that we ended up all in hellfire. Show us those people because they want to get one last act of revenge. They want to step on them. نَجْعَلْهُمَا تَحْتَ أَقْدَامِنَا. We want to put them under our feet so that they can be lower than us before we all enter Jahannam together. They are complaining to Allah that certain people from the jinn as well, and mankind, misled them. So they want to get back at these people before they all enter into the hellfire. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the hellfire. Allahumma ameen. Now they're very angry because they feel that they have been deceived or they have been pressured into misguidance, and now they cannot do anything about it. The only thing that they can do, one last act, is to step on them. on their way to Jannah. Is this not peer pressure? What is the first example of peer pressure from the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? A very instrumental one, by the way. We don't think of it as that way, but it is exactly that. If we recall, when Abu Talib was on his deathbed, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a great supporter in his uncle. Out of all the family members, Abu Talib was the one who was a mushrik but helped Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the most. And that's why it hurt Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam a lot. It hurt him a lot because Abu Talib, despite all that he has done to support and protect Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even during the Muqata'a, he was also boycotted with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam 3 years. He was also boycotted even though he wasn't a Muslim. He was a mushrik, he was a polytheist, but because of his sympathetic nature and his protective nature over Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to protect him from the worst of Quraysh, Abu Jahl and Abu Sufyan at that time, and Utbah and so on and so forth, he also was cast aside. But on his deathbed, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tried extremely hard to get him to say the kalima, to get him to say the shahad. He said, "Oh my uncle, at least say this so that I can do shafa'ah for you on the Day of Judgment. At least say La ilaha illallah. At least one part. If not even Muhammad Rasulullah, because Tawheed the kalima has 2 clauses. The first one is Tawheed of Allah, and the second was testifying to the Nubuwwah of Rasulullah. He said, at least say the first one. At least say that. At least I can use it to intercede on your behalf in the Day of Judgment. And what happened? He was very close to saying it. If it were not for Abu Jahl and the senior members of the Umara, the Hukam of Quraysh, the leaders of Quraysh, and we'll talk about this as well, how the leaders can influence a society as a whole. So this is like not peer pressure, but this is pressure from above. He was very close. Abu Jahl said, are you going to forsake the deen of our fathers? Are you going to forsake the deen of your forefathers? Because at that time, your lineage, your nasab was very important. Your where you came from, your family roots, the tribal name, and they used to give great importance to their ancestors and their forefathers, so that they would not try to oppose the customs or the standing or the belief of the forefathers. That's why we know in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, every time the kuffar used to say, like, are we going to forsake the aliha of abaina? Are we going to forsake the idols and the gods of our forefathers? We never heard of this new message from our forefathers before us. So they were very rigid in their ways. And that tends to happen in a structure, in a societal structure. Structure is very, very rigid. It's very resistant to change. Very resistant to change, as we see today. And so Abu Talib, so close to being saved by Rasulullah ﷺ, but yet so far. Because of what? Because of the people around him. This is at his deathbed. And as Qadr has it, Abu Talib was not saved. But because of his sympathy, because of his support of Rasulullah ﷺ, Abu Talib is the one who will have the lowest punishment in the hellfire. But that doesn't mean it's a walk in the park. That punishment will cause his brain to boil because of the heat from the hellfire on his feet, from the shoes. And that is the least of punishment. And he got that much because of the sympathy. But had Abu Jahl and them not forced Abu Talib would most likely have said the Shahada and had been saved. Rasulullah ﷺ could not save his own uncle. Of course, his parents as well, but he wasn't a Nabi at that time. So this is the first instance, and perhaps the most important instance of peer pressure, because this is at the deathbed. Why do you think when believers are passing away, the people around him are encouraged to encourage the one who's passing away to say the kalima? Because at that moment, it is very difficult. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on all those who have passed away, Because it is very difficult. I haven't gone through it, you haven't gone through it, but those who have went through it, they are not here to tell us what the pain is. They are not here to tell us about the sakarat of maut. At that time, your mind goes berserk. You know, people during COVID, they have this thing called, I forgot what it's called, but they call it like, when you're in the ICU for 60 days, 90 days, people start hallucinating in the ICU. This became a very well-known phenomenon during COVID, that people who were in the hospital for so long, they started hallucinating, they didn't lose their mind, but they were imagining different things. With the ventilator in their mouth, in the throat, their mind, and they're sedated, and then when they wake up, they're imagining things. They start attacking the nurse, they start attacking this because of the pain and it's just insane. So imagine how much worse it is during the time of death. May Allah give us the tawfiq to say the kalima at the time of death. And may Allah allow us to be surrounded by the people who will help us to say the kalima. That is very important. People, they encourage people to read Yasin and all these things. These don't have any foundation from the Sunnah of Rasulullah. But what's important is that we encourage the one who's passing away to say the kalima, because this is the proper peer pressure that you want to give. You're trying to support your brother or your sister in his final departing moments. Positive peer pressure. Peer pressure applies to the kids in the first, second, third grade, fourth grade at that level, and it applies to adults, and it applies to elderly at their level. Everybody has their own level of peer pressure. It's going to be difficult to go through all of the levels, but we will try to talk in a general framework. And then people who are intelligent, people who are from ulil albab, they can extract or interpolate the information for their own case. For example, in my area where we do research, I have people, their daily way of thinking is just publishing papers, research papers, 5G, 6G, and beyond, internet, wireless communication. They all think. 70-year-old person thinking this way, a person who's about to retire, a person who's 90-year-old thinking that way, a person who's 30 years old thinking that way. All they think about is work. And because they're surrounded by colleagues who their way of thinking is just work and publication and prestige, and going to conferences, visiting this, visiting that, even until the moment of death, they still think about papers. One of my mentors, he retired just last semester, 90 years old. He's a Lebanese Christian. He retired, last semester was his last semester of teaching, meaning the spring of 22. That was his last semester of teaching at 90 years old, and he retired that semester, but I just found out he died 2 days ago. But he worked all the way till the end, with perhaps little to no preparation for the akhirah. And whatever preparation he had done as a Christian or an atheist, perhaps it has gone in vain. Perhaps, Allah knows best. But why do you think this happened? I was joking around with a colleague of mine, talking about one of my superiors at work. He's 70 plus years old. He already has 2 stents in the heart. He already had a heart attack before. He has a lot of health problems. And all he does is run after more money and more money, more research funding. He has no intention to retire. No intention to retire. He jokes about it. He jokes about it 1 week, saying, if I don't get the money this time, I'm going to retire. But then he doesn't ever retire. He's been saying that for the last 10 years. So I was telling a friend of mine, a Muslim, I said, you know, this person putting so much pressure on us to get funding, you know, we have to write proposals and so on to get research grants. It's very, very difficult. And this person just keeps giving us so much pressure. When is this guy going to retire? That's what I was saying. Can he just leave us alone? Let him retire. But all of his colleagues are getting money left and right. They're all doing the same thing. And so if he were to stop, if he were to just retire now, it would look less for him. It would look bad for him. He probably doesn't want to continue. At a certain age, your body just cannot keep up, even though your brain can be very sharp. But your physical body, and that's why as-sihha is one of the biggest ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after Iman. And that's one hadith. But your physical body cannot keep up, even though your brain is very sharp. What's that very renowned physicist? He died, Stephen Hawking. Very sharp brain. Probably the smartest brain there is for the longest time. But his body is nothing. Why do people succumb to peer pressure? Especially kids. If it is difficult for adults, when you go to work, all you hear about, oh, I bought a house here, I bought a house there, I got this promotion, nothing wrong. But because of all this waswas, all these whispers from the people, we tend to start shaping our line of thinking. Our afkar becomes very different. Instead of focusing on the akhirah and using the dunya as a side means, we start making the dunya the focus and forget the akhirah. And then we are the same people to quote the ayah, وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيا. But we have to remember who this ayah actually came through. This ayah, وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيا, and do not forget your share from this life. It came to the Sahaba who were barely making it at the first place. It didn't come to us, we have 3 houses. It didn't come to us where we have promotion left and right, making 100K, for our 401K is filled. It didn't come to us. We have to look at the people it came to first. It came to the people who barely were eating, barely were able to keep their back straight, and Allah told them, and do not forget. Allah didn't say run after, He said also don't forget. It's like this. You have an exam, and then you have the extra credit questions. Do the main questions first, and if you get the chance, then you do the extra credit, which is 2 points, 3 points out of the 100. Don't focus on this and miss the 10. This is the intended meaning. The Quran is to be understood the way it was understood by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by the Sahaba, by the Tabi'een, and the Salaf al-Salih. These are the people that we follow. And we get our understanding, our tafsir of the Quran from them. We don't make up our own interpretation. So the first, I'm digressing here, but the first key of tafsir is to see how they understood it. And that means, obviously, you have to look at the time, the place, and the audience. We were not the primary audience, so you have to look at the condition at that time and then extrapolate what it's supposed to mean for you. So when Allah says, وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا, to them, for us, it's as if we already overate the dunya and it's time for us to now focus on the akhirah. Going back to the peer pressure, I digress. This topic, you can go a lot of different places, unfortunately. The kids, when they go to school, they spend at least 8 hours a day in school. 5 days a week. That's 40 hours weekly. And kids, they sleep longer. Maybe 8 hours, 9 hours. Adults, today's in this society, people barely get 5, 6, 7 hours if you're lucky. So kids, most of their waking hour, their waking time is spent in school. With who? With their friends, with their teachers. Now this has an implication, especially at that tender age. First grade, second, third, fourth, all the way up until high school. But mainly, the brain is being shaped in those years. And that is why, in this society, the forces that be, we have people who are trying to peer pressure, program the kids a certain way from the get-go. Especially with the liberal movement that we see today. And I tend to make this a recurring theme when I talk. We don't realize the damage it's doing until it is too late. We don't realize the damage it is doing until it's too late. When we went to school, it's not the same time, it's not the same environment that the kids now are going to school. Even if you went to school here, it is not the same. And it is very difficult for those who have kids, but they didn't go to school here, And even if they went to school here, and they went to school in the 70s or 80s or 90s, it's very difficult for them to grasp the damage that is being done to the minds of these kids. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah 7, وقال الذين استكبروا للذين استضعفوا أنحن صددناكم عن الهدى بعد إذ جاءكم بل كنتم مجرمين. Those who are arrogant will tell those who are weak, did we stop you from following the guidance? أنحن صددناكم عن الهدى بعد إذ جاءكم. Did we stop you from huda, from guidance, after it came to you? We didn't stop you from anything. Don't try to blame us. بل كنتم قوم مجرمين. But you yourselves were criminals. Don't put it on us. We didn't stop you from anything. You just wanted to be like us. So you try to dress the way I dressed. You try to talk the way I talk. You try to do what I did. And now you ended up where you are. I ended up where I am. Don't tell us that I stopped you from anything. And in the Araf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَتْ أُولَاهُمْ لِإِخْوَانِهِمْ فَمَا كَانَ لَكُمْ عَلَيْنَا مِنْ فَضْلٍ فَذُوقُوا الْعَذَابَ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْسِبُونَ. The nations who will enter, the first nations who will enter into Jahannam, will tell those who come after them into Jahannam that you had no favor upon us. So don't blame us. You taste the punishment that you yourself worked toward. So on the Day of Judgment, our friends, those who we got influenced to do drugs, I think New York passed, they legalized marijuana or something, and you're going to see that this is now going to become, it's already a problem, but this is going to be, because it's legal, it's going to be even a bigger problem now for the kids. They already have problems. And then there was this other thing called vaping. I saw kids in Tarawih, after Tarawih in Ramadan vaping in the masjid, in the basement. I saw that happening. Right? And this world, this society will try to find many excuses to push that on the kids. They'll say, oh, you know, it does this, it takes away from real cigarettes, it does this, it gives you this, it gives you the ability to focus and study. That may be true. That may be true. I don't know. There may be some benefits. يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس. They ask you about wine and intoxicants and gambling. Tell them, O Muhammad, that there are evils and some benefit. There are huge evils and maybe some benefit. وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. But their harm is much greater than their good. And that is why it is haram. So this society will try to tell our kids, it's medicinal marijuana, it's cannabis, or it's this, or it's that. Even in my time, some kids were arrested in high school because they were found with drugs in their locker. In my time, 2008, 2009. That's over 10 years ago. Muslim kids in an Islamic school. Muslim cops had to come to do a raid on the lockers of the school. We knew he was a cop, he was undercover, he made it very clear. How? Where did this come from? And then shortly after I found out, the same kids, they are doing 10 years in prison because they tried to rob a supermarket somewhere in Bay Ridge. They only got $3 and they're doing 10 years. What an evil portion that they have earned. How do you think these things happen? These thoughts just don't come about from ourselves. They come from outside influences. You see it on TV, you see it from the friends here and there. So the first graders, second graders, third graders, fourth, fifth, all the way and so on, up until even after college, even at work. We all have our own means of being subjugated to evil forces outside. We always forget that there are shayateen from ins and jinn. Because we read it, but we forget الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. Shayateen are not just the invisible ones which we cannot see. We have visible shayateen. We have mankind, human beings who are shayateen. من الجنة والناس. The shayateen, we seek refuge in Allah. That's what Surah An-Nas is, from the devils, from the whispers of the devils, from mankind and jinn. But because we have this perception that shayateen are the ones that we cannot see, we forget that sometimes we have shayateen in our own house, our own wives, our own kids, maybe our parents or brother or sister. You know, we ask Allah to protect us. Some of them can be shayateen. They can be giving us wrong ideas. And because they are so close to us, we don't even know that we are being misled. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من ذنوبهم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا بعد وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وبعد. As I was saying, sometimes we may get wrong ideas, we may get things which are not ideas, waswas, or suggestions which are not pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It can be from our own kids. For example, you can say, oh, how can my kids influence me to do something wrong? I'm their father, I'm their mother. They cannot influence me. Absolutely wrong. You know where your kids get you from? It's for your vulnerability and your love for them. When I was in 8th grade, I saw my friend running around with 3 of his dad's credit cards. His dad literally just gave it to him. I was mind blown. First of all, he gave you the pins as well, or he just gave you the cards, or are those fakes? You know, they send you American Express, they send you these fake credit cards, promotional ones. You know, they were real. Did he steal them, or he said, no, my dad gave them to me, he told me to use it. Use it where? You were at school. They say, Baba, Mama, I need this, I need that. He's like, no, I'm busy, I can't get it. She's like, come on, Baba, everybody has it. You need this, you need that. So, what else? I should take the credit card. I'm not going to give you the bills. Take the whole card. This is crazy. And then, you know what? One of my friends, he bought a $100 wallet, but he went broke to buy the wallet. Was it Lacoste or something? So he was like showing it off. This was back in high school, I remember, in 12th grade, I remember. So he took out the wallet. He's like, Abdulah, you know how much this costs? He's like, it's $100. But then he's like, guess what? He's like, I'm broke. SubhanAllah. I've been using the same wallet my dad gifted me from 2009. There's not a single scratch or tear on it. I don't think it's $100. I don't know how much it was. But knowing my dad, you want to get something more than 10, 15 bucks. But I've been using the same wallet since 2009. Very durable. So these kids, what they do is, they come up with these brand names, they try to wear them. Also in my time it was the North Face. Everybody had to have a North Face backpack. I don't know, is that still the case? Maybe it is. And the North Face jacket, right? They had to have that. But, Uqsim Billah Azim, 90% of the students I saw wearing the North Face backpack, the backpack was empty, no books. These were the kids who were always failing and messing up. But they had the nicest backpacks, but no books. And even if they had books, only 1 page of notes after a whole year. So, this kind of peer pressure, it rubs off. Except those whom Allah has mercy on. So I just gave a very silly example of peer pressure. It's silly to us because we're matured, inshallah, now. Right? We understand that if we were into those kind of things, it was very silly. You know, we look back at life as we grow up, we see that, man, I did a lot of crazy things. It was very foolish and silly. What was I thinking? But we only, you know, they say 20/20 hindsight. It doesn't really help much now. But this kind of stuff, you need to let your kids know that, hey, I love you, but in school, okay, whether it be public or Islamic, they all have their own sets of problems and goods, of course. You will see this, you will see many kids doing this and that, but you should know that Allah is watching. Try to instill this into the mind, that Allah is watching, even if Baba Mama is not in school. Even if the teacher lets you get away, nowadays the teachers let you get away, the teacher lets you get away with a lot of stuff. And it came on the news many times. Teachers have the ability, or rather I think the legal protection to hide certain things from the parents. You guys know that, right?
they have the ability, for example, this gender change and all this pronoun and stuff, they are legally allowed to not inform the parents about this, I think until the 8th grade or something, whatever. The case says, your kid can be saying a lot of things in school, but when they come home, they're a different person. And so they seem all fine, but they already succumb to peer pressure at school. And the teacher will be legally obligated to hide that from you. What kind of nonsense is this? My own kid, you're going to hide something from me? And you're going to help them cover it up? This kind of evil? What do you think this peer pressure is going to do? After 12 years of this system. After 12 years of the system, what do you think this peer pressure is going to do? Even in Islamic school, these things are starting to creep in. The drug problem has already crept in a long time ago. Some of them, it's on a lower level, and many of the problems come because when the parents notice that their kids have gone way off the track in public school, they bring them back to Islam, not bring them back, but they bring them into Islamic school as like a last-ditch effort to save the kids. And then these kids come as bad apples and then mess up the existing kids. And of course, a lot of the messing up also happens because of home and so on. But subhanAllah, peer pressure is very important. There are many ayat in the Quran, all the way until the ayat. They say, those who are misguided and they're entering the hellfire, they're telling the other guys with them that you used to come on our right side, meaning close companionship, and you used to tell us that don't follow Muhammad, don't follow this. Do you actually believe the message of Muhammad that when we die and we become dust and bones and so on, that we will be raised again? This is insane. This was all peer pressure. And the ayat are very clear about that. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us good friends. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a true understanding of Iman. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us true following of the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma a'izz al-Islam wal-Muslimin wa adhill al-shirk wal-mushrikeen wa dammir a'da'aka a'da' ad-din. Allahumma salli ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira. سبحان ربنا رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.